I've watched a Fortune 500 company all but collapse in just a few short years. Not because of bad products, not because of marketing conditions, but because the CEO did exactly what you're probably doing right now, building floors before laying a foundation. I'm Steve Crow. I've got 25 patents. I've led 1,200 engineers at a Fortune 500 company, and I've founded 4 companies. One I sold, one I should have sold for $100 million, but didn't because I made the same mistake. If you're scaling fast right now, managing instead of leading, feeling stuck even though you're successful, you're building on sand. And let me show you what Bedrock looks like. So sand versus bedrock analogy. We're talking about that. So what does that mean, Steve? Some people, obviously we understand sand, and then the next thing is bedrock. What is bedrock? So bedrock is, if you've ever put a house up on pilings, you've had to run poles all the way down to bedrock. It's solid. It won't give up. So the thing is a lot of companies, you have a bunch of people just working for the common goal, right? We're all rushing in that direction, but we don't have, why are we rushing in that direction? What's our purpose? We've got our mission, our vision, and our purpose. And a lot of times they're just arbitrary, whatever somebody can figure out to say to somebody to get employees to do good work. And that's what we want to get away from, when we really want to understand what a culture is. But really, essentially, that company that I watched collapse from the sidelines, it was essentially the leader. It's all the leader. A business can't grow if the leader can't grow. And so the leader was essentially kind of working outside of integrity. And when you do that, and when you're focused on, it seemed like he was focused more on himself than he was focused on the company. And as a whole, the company really hurt. And I could see it, but I couldn't really say much to it, because at that point, there was really not much you could say to this individual. But you can look over time, and the thing is, results never lie. You can look at your results and start to backtrack. It's easy to kind of backtrack how you got there. And if you start to look at, you'll start to realize a lot of things that you did were probably on sand, right? Because there was no supporting structure, right? So that's what I really love to tell people is go back and look at your results, right? I can stand here and I can talk till I'm blue in the face, but until you understand your results, right, nothing's going to change. So you got to look at your results. There's a complete different way of looking at failures that completely changes everything. And it's the way I was able to patent 25 ideas. I have over hundreds of patents that I filed, but 25 patents that were actually granted. They're worldwide, they're novel. A lot of things you can come up with a great idea but not get it across the finish line. So it takes about 3 to 4 or 5 years sometimes to get a patent across the line. But that's essentially, you get sand versus bedrock. You never want to build on sand. I mean, that's obvious, but a lot of times leaders just don't understand when they are building on sand. So the 3 signs you're on sand, right? Your culture is just words on the wall. There's actually your hidden foundation of your company is your culture. Do you realize that? See, a lot of times, I know when I worked for Fortune 500 companies, HR said, we got to come up with a mission, we got to come up with a vision and a purpose, and then we have to have some kind of culture. So when most people get together, what kind of culture are they going to put together? Well, we're leadership, we're above everybody else. And, what we're going to do is we're going to build a sign that says, this is how all the employees should work. But the big issue is, see, it's the hidden foundation of your company. So what really gets you is when you say this is how, with integrity, whatever those things are, right? But then over here, the leadership guys, they don't act in integrity. And so then you see the mismatch, right? It's no different with your kids. If you sit there and tell your kids something and you do something completely different, what are they going to pay attention to? Or even for yourself, if you're talking to somebody and they say something, but then they act different, what do you think? When somebody says something and they act different, what does that drum up in you? You start to not believe them, right? It's not true. The thing is, it's very easy to kind of say things that aren't congruent with what you're doing, but it's really hard with your body language. Like 7% of language is just the words that we say, the words that come out of our mouth, but it's the tone. See, if I change my tone, then I completely change the way you're hearing it. So that's about 28%, but like 55% is in my body language, right? If I'm sitting up, I'm smiling while I'm talking, or if I'm like this, I'm having conversation. So you don't realize, but the gist of that is to explain that your body language is doing more talking than your mouth. But when you hear someone say something, put something on the side, but their body does something different, What kind of signal does that send out to everybody in your company? So you can kind of start to see how your culture is the foundation of your company. The other one is you're managing, right? I was at one point in the Fortune 500 company, my one little group was doing better than all the other groups in that division. And I thought I was the best leader ever, but I wasn't. I was not. I had no idea how bad of a leader I was. I was a great manager. Oh, my the metrics, I was get all my projects were on time, all my projects were in budget. I was getting more done than all the other groups combined. The reason why a lot of that was happening was because I don't do anything like other people have done it. Don't compare. Don't compare yourself. So you can look what other people are doing, but you should have an expectation that's well above anything you could ever imagine. See, that's one of the things we start to compare. The world, what is it? Comparison, scarcity, and fear. That's how the world works. So if you're ever in comparison, scarcity, or fear, then you're of the world. Do you want to be of the world? I don't think you do, right? And my program teaches people how not to be of the world and to be connected to a higher source, to the higher self, to have a knowing like none other. So you got one is culture, just words on a wall, and then two, you're managing instead of truly leading. But the last one is growth feels exhausting instead of energizing. Or you just feel like you're hustling and grinding. If you're hustling and grinding, that means you're not tied into your higher self. You're not getting information from the infinite. One of the reasons why I was so successful, and I'm kind of bringing this out on top, but the reason why when I was very young, I was given projects that had been worked on for decades, and people couldn't solve them. And I think it was more like a joke. Let's just give it to Steve, and kind of like, he talks a big game. Let's see if he can do it. Well, I got it. I had a failure, and so he came up to my office and he asked me. He's like, "What did this failure teach you?" Because see, I was ready to take that piece of paper and just throw it, and like everybody does. Oh, that didn't work. Shh. Oh, that didn't work. Shh. Just keep throwing it on the floor. And you got all these pieces of paper. But the thing is, when you're doing something, when you're testing, when you're in the lab and testing, that something's trying to tell you. It's just one of the most powerful things that I can teach people to really mine their failures, right? And once you begin to mine your failures, that's why I have so many patents, because I'm able to quickly look at what's not working, right? And say, oh, that's why that's not working. And this is true, is we're going in a direction opposite of where we're supposed to go. We're supposed to go this. Could you imagine? Of course, I live in Texas, but we don't have a lot of. We have rivers, but not there a lot. But up in Arkansas, there's a river that runs. It's running pretty fast. Or the Mississippi River. Could you imagine being out there and actually going against that current? Well, that's what most of us are doing, not even knowing it. That's why we're so worn out, right? But between social media and all that other stuff, we are just worn out. But could you imagine if you could turn into that current and go with that current, how much things are going to be easier? So once you begin to do that, things just start to open up for you. And it's just the most amazing thing. I've had it happen in my life. And I just love, 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 love sharing this. That's why I'm so passionate about this. Okay, so why do smart people build on sand? So I talked about it in my last video, but essentially what happens is our intellect is what we've been using our whole life. If you're 50 years old, for 50 years, your intellect, the thing you've been working on, the flesh that you had, the lizard, I call it the lizard side of you, you've been teaching that thing for so long. I'm a gymnast, I could do all kinds of stuff in my head, but not physically in my body anymore, right? That hurts. The thing is we rely on our intellect so much. And the thing is that the that's going to bring us incremental, right? Incremental progress. So that's going to be like 1 or 2x, your 5%, your 10%. People will spend decades, 5% every year, 5% of the year. What I'm looking for, this is what I'm looking for. This is a result. This is the result that I'm looking for. This is exponential. You go from incremental to exponential. And again, results don't lie. So look at your results. If for the last 10 years, if you've been doing incremental, that means you're not tied into your higher self. You're relying on your intellect to get you where you are, just like 99.999% of the rest of the world. I started an oil and gas company 2017 with the ex mergers and acquisitions manager of Halliburton. He did billions and billions of dollars in mergers and acquisitions, and he was my investor that we built an oil and gas company and sold it 2023. My mom just told me 5 years ago that when I was 7, I could barely put a sentence together, and I was held back in second grade. How am I doing all this? She doesn't know. And for a long time, I didn't know. But you know what I did? I kept asking the question, how can I help other people learn this? And I found it. So here's the deal. What's the real cost of building on sand? The deal is you end up, you don't know where you're at. You're just living day to day. You're showing up at work. You're a firefighter. You're trying to put stuff out. The next thing that happens, you start losing talent. People, the thing is, people aren't as vocal, right? They don't say things. So one of the things as a leader, you want to be the kind of leader that does say things. You want to have the kind of leader that drives people mimic, right? So you want to mimic, you want to mimic an open door policy. You want to be able to be open with people. So if they feel like there's something they need to talk to you about, you want to hear about it first before you hear about it from somebody else. I really think burnout, there really is no such thing as burnout. What burnout is that you're just not, again, the analogy that I had of the river, right? It's going 10 miles an hour or 20 miles an hour, however fast it's going. Most of us, that's the direction of what spirit wants for us, what the universe wants for us. That's in the direction that we need to go, right? But what do? We got to do on our own. I got to have it on my own. I'm going to do it myself, right? I'm a lone wolf, whatever that is, whatever, thinks keeps you proud. And then what you do is you go against the flow. And so that whole time you're working in the opposite direction of the flow that's for you. This is all going for you. Everything that happens in your life, whether you realize it up to now, everything that's happened in your life is for you. It's designed specifically for you. We have to take 100% responsibility for what happens to us. Now, the big C word, the cancer, or whatever, some of that stuff, there is environmental things that might come, but we get to choose how we're going to receive it. That's very important. And everything is vibration. Everything is in how you feel, right? And your thoughts. Your thoughts drive your feelings drive your actions, and your actions drive your results. Results never lie. If you don't like your results, you have to go back and change your thoughts. But what if you're mad, right, about something that happened to you, and you focus on that and it just grates and grates and grates? Guess what? That's going to drive more results. That's going to drive more results. So a lot of times, one of the first levels of enlightenment is to understand that we're not victims. As soon as we stop becoming a victim and we start taking full responsibility for our lives, guess what? Everything changes. Everything changes. So it's really exciting to do that, because once you start taking responsibility for everything, it's a tough pill to swallow at first, but you'll just be so amazed. And the people that don't take full responsibility, they're building on sand. That's one of the costs, because they keep trying to pass it off on somebody else and try to blame it on another department or just whatever that is. And until they take responsibility for it, it'll never get solved. It'll just be this constant cycle, and then everybody's pointing at each other. And what does that do any good for anybody? So what does Bedrock actually look like? Well, a clear vision, going in the flow, working with your team that actually believes leadership is leadership, and managing is managing, and really understanding what your culture is, right? See, that C word, that culture word, is always, I always just thought, HR, they're just, they don't know what they're talking about. They're saying all this. Though some of that might be a little true, because they're just busy, right? If you work in their group, you'll know they're super busy taking care of whatever the executives tell them to take care of. Remember, HR doesn't work for the employees. HR works for the executives, right? So get that straight first. But then, as a company that's in integrity, right, then HR does work for the employees. But I see constantly how that, and that's a whole nother level of on being on sand, right? If you have to have your HR protect the executive team because of whatever they're doing, there's a big sign. And actually, to be on Bedrock is really just to have integrity, and I'm not using that word lightly at all. That's actually one of uh, my three values: integrity, love, because love encompasses so much, and service. Integrity, love, and service. So if you want to be on Bedrock, you have to have integrity. There is no if, ands, or buts. You have to have integrity. So integrity is one of them. And then just really believing, believing in everybody there. Everybody that's there, you should have brought them on the team. One of the things you can have Bedrock is to realize as a leader, if someone has to go, if you have to let someone go, you have to take full responsibility of that. And I know a lot of people are going to go, what you talking about? So I have one caveat. Now, if there's drugs or alcohol involved, then that's a pass. But one of the things I did as a leader is I started taking responsibility for individuals that I wanted to let go. And as soon as I did that, I started to realize I wasn't leading them right? A true leader can take anybody. If everybody shows up and they're like all good workers, they're all superstars, what kind of leader is that? Right? So you have to be able to bring people in or work with people. The thing is, if you take a fish and you try to tell them go work on land, how's that going to work out for them? Not good. But how many fish do we have that we try to say go work on this and they don't do a good job, and then we dock them for it, right? See, as the leader, you got to look at where their strengths are and put them in the right place. And if it's not working out there, where else can it go? But you really want to look at the individual, look at the foundation of the individual. The foundation of the company is the culture. The foundation of culture is something else, much deeper, right? You've got to get that. And then when you start hiring for that, all the people that come in, they're all in alignment. So everybody's moving in the same direction, like that river that I was talking about. And it makes all the difference in the world. So the power bounce. So I like to have analogies or to help people understand where I'm coming from, because I'm at this other level in my life and just really trying to work with people that need to level up a couple of levels. One of the ways that I give an explanation is, have you ever been on a trampoline? And I know I mean, maybe when I was younger, maybe people did this more, but you ever heard of power bouncing, when you power bounce somebody? So on a trampoline, right, it's got springs and you're jumping and your body's coming down and you've got that acceleration that you jumped up that's coming down, that's pushing, and they're going up and down, right? You jump on a trampoline. That's fun. Now, if you're another person on that trampoline and you jump just at the right time and you add your weight to them as they're going down, and you stretch the trampoline out more, and then you relax your legs so the trampoline is no longer lifting you, right? So you just added twice their weight if you're about the same size. Now they go up, and they'll go up like 2 or 3 times higher. I don't know if you saw some videos like people doing like 5 or 6 flips in the air, and there's like a whole group of people. The guy's jumping up and down, and the people jump at the same time he jumps. That's my expectation for my clients, right? That when you come in here, you're going to be like, man, I've been working on this. I want to come next to you. Power bounce, less effort. Everything should be less effort. And so if you've ever looked at people and thought, are they addicted to complacency? They're not addicted to complacency. They're listening to their lizard, their flesh, their intellect. Their intellect says, hey man, if you could just do what you did yesterday, that'd be great. You've seen people like that. You know them. Probably drives you crazy. If you're a leader, it drives you crazy. Well, they just listen to it more, and you stop listening to it and you push through. But the goal is to get you a whole multi-levels higher understanding that you're just on the very tip of the iceberg. And you likely know this. There's things that happen to me. If you sabotage yourself, that's the lizard. And I'm not saying it's out to get you, it's just out to take care of you. And it doesn't show up and say, you know what, I'm going to sabotage your work relationship, or whatever it is, right? It's not going to tell you that. It's going to say things like, I'm going to keep you safe. And what does it take to stay safe? Don't venture out. And really, there's more to this, and I've done this in my life, and I had the results to prove it, right? To show it. And there were times when I won hundreds of millions of dollars, even from another company, and brought it to the company I was working at. And I got an email written about me and all these wonderful things. I stuck it in my attaboy folder. Well, 5 years later, my dad passes away. It takes him 18 months to die, and I lost everything in the span of 3 months. You've probably heard that story, but if you haven't, pick it up on another video. But essentially, I'm pretty down on life. My dad just died. I lost my first marriage, just completely went off the rails, trying to put it all back together, remarried. That one didn't work out. She wouldn't support me while my dad was dying. All my friends ghosted me, and I ended up losing my job. I mean, there was just a myriad of things happen, but that's the short of it. But essentially, I jumped off in my attaboy folder to like read, what other people said about me so I could feel good about myself, right? kind of pick myself up. I jumped off in that folder and I read that email and I could not remember that. It was such a wonderful part of my life. How could I not remember it? Well, that's the deal. See, you're that's the sabotage I'm talking about. And you can't know the sabotage. Your mind is actively deleting things from you, right? And I want to get that stopped. I want to stop it. I want you to see. I want you to embrace risk, not crazy risk, calculated risk, but embrace at least the times that you did take risk and you were, that it worked out for you. Because your mind, your flesh, your lizard side will try and try and try to delete that from you because it does not want you taking risk. It wants you just to do what you did yesterday. Look, here's the reality. You can just keep adding floors to sand, wondering why you're hitting a ceiling, or you can build on bedrock. I've created a focus strategy session where we'll assess where your foundation is cracking and map out what bedrock actually looks like for you. Specifically, not theory, practical steps based on 20 plus years of building, breaking, and rebuilding. In this session, we'll uncover what it's costing you right now to stay where you're at, not just financially, but in your relationships, in your health, in your actual freedom. Then we'll do a time machine exercise 3 years from now when everything you wanted has happened. And we'll map the gap. No pitch, no pressure, just clarity. The link's in the description. If you're serious about building something exponential instead of something just big, let's talk.